Okay, hello and welcome to another exciting session as part of our Financial Management Strategies webinar series. I'm Adam Beresin from msdynamicsworld.com, and today's session, Intercompany Accounting for Service and Project-Based Organizations in Dynamics AX 2012 R3, will be presented by Renee Ernst and Gregor Newland of Ellipse Solutions. So before we get started, I want to thank our Financial Management Series sponsors, Avalara, DocStar, Esker, Metafile, and Lexmark for their continued support of msdynamicsworld.com. I'd also like to mention that we invite you to add your feedback and ask questions today during the presentation. Please use the Q&A tab on the right-hand side of your screen to submit your questions, and Renee and Gregor will be sure to answer all of them at the end of the presentation. So without further delay, please allow me to welcome our presenters, Renee Ernst and Gregor Newland.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you very much, and thanks for the opportunity to present this information today. I hope that all of you find this useful. Renee, could you go to the next slide, please? So just very briefly about us, we're a global Microsoft Dynamics AX partner. We're approximately 15 years old. We do specialize in business solutions and software development and implementation services for professional services companies. Amongst others, we have about 50 qualified personnel, and besides providing help desk implementation services, we also provide help desk services for existing Microsoft Dynamics AX customers. If you have any questions at the end or need to know how to contact us, there'll be time for that in this presentation. But I don't want to waste your time with commercial dealings. Let's move right into the information that we're going to present to you today. So what we're going to talk about today is intercompany resource scheduling within the project series. Project timesheets, just a basic overview of how they work. We do have another presentation that presents that more in depth, but that's not the purpose of today's. We're going to talk about how intercompany project invoices work, how you set up your intercompany ledgers to post, and the entire intercompany setup and configuration review. This is primarily accounting, non-operational. There will be some operational aspects that will be covered in today's demo, but primarily this is about learning how to handle the back-end accounting and setup for intercompany inside Microsoft Dynamics AX project series. So without any further ado, let's turn you over to Renee, one of our certified consultants, and she can take it from here.
Well, hello everyone. I'm so glad you were able to join today, and we're going to just go through a demo. Before we do, I just want to take a quick look at a workflow that we're going to kind of discuss what we're going to review. So we're going to have two legal entities involved in our demo today. We're going to have USMF, which is going to be a legal entity that is going to borrow or schedules a worker from another legal entity, DEMF, and that's what you see in this first box here. In the second box, you see where the worker posts their time against the project in the borrower company, USMF. And then the next step will be where the DMF lending company invoices the borrowing company for the worker's time. Then next we'll see where the borrowing company pays the lender for the worker's time. And then finally we're going to see where the lending company receives the payment that was received from the borrowing company. So without further ado, we're just going to get into our demo. As you can see, we're all here in AX. Oops. Hang on. Technical difficulties. All right. So the first thing we're going to do, skip my note. We're going to go over to the company that is going to borrow the resource, and we're going to schedule the resource from the lending company. Now, I've used two legal entities, USMF and DEMF, which is Contoso, Germany, and this is just the Microsoft demo data that I've used. It doesn't have to be a domestic and a foreign type company. It can be 2 domestic, 2 foreign. That's just what I set up for this demo. It's all based on configuration. So in the borrowing company, USMF, I've created a project. And so we're going to go over to that project now in Project Management and Accounting. And I have this service project that's going to be worked on. I'm going to open that up. And I'm ready now to get a resource onto my project. I created a role for the project, which I've added here. You can see this role is a configurable setup, and we'll cover that a little bit later. But what the role does for you is tells the project what sort of competencies you need for the workers that you want to book. So it will determine the skill sets that are needed, the education, and those kinds of things. So you can schedule based on this automatically, but I chose to book the worker manually. So I'm just going to click on the book worker. This button is only available in R3. It has a different label in R2, but it does the same function. So we are in R3 today, CU9. So as you can see, I have 3 resources that met the finance role that I had configured, and one of those is in the DEMF legal entity, Dawn. So I can see what her availability is here. So you can see that. And I can determine her availability by weeks. I can look at days just by switching here. That will convert the view to a day view. I also can look at it as a month's view. And this date range that's here is all based on the start and expected end time for the project that I've set up. So now, one of the new things, I can display the remaining capacity that she has. See that? So that's kind of nice. So I decided that Dawn is the worker. I've worked with her before, and I'm getting a little bit of a price break, so I'm going to go ahead and go with the legal entity, the DEMF resource. And now what I'm going to do is I am going to go ahead and hard book her. And one of the features in R3 is I can do it on capacity percentage. So as you can see, I'm going to pick percentage, and I'm going to take 50% of Dawn's capacity. So if I just book her here, and I click book, you'll see the remaining capacity change. And you can see that she now is available on the project once I close this form. And now, based on the activities and things that I've set up, she is booked for 1,400 hours from the start of the project to the end of the project. So does anybody have any questions about the resource scheduling portion? Okay, great. So if we go back to our workflow, we finished this scheduling box right here, and now we're going to move on for our user, our worker, to post their time against the project. So, and I just need to start my workflow session 1 second. I need to start this ahead of time and I forgot it. This is just a little helper that developers can use or trainers can use rather than using the batch job for workflow. So I have a session now logged in as Dawn. So this is Dawn, and she's in her DEMF company, right? And she's going to enter a timesheet. Now, normally timesheets will probably be done on Enterprise Portal, but for the ease of the demo, I'm just going to do this inside of AX. So you go to the Project Accounting module, Timesheets, All Timesheets, or you could go to My Timesheets since I'm logged in as Dawn. And she's going to say a new timesheet. And we're going to go back a little bit in time just to show some historical. And we're going to say the project started on the 16th, and she's booking her time for that week of the 16th through the 22nd. She's going to say OK, and that's going to create the header of the timesheet. And now she's going to add a line. And as you can see, it defaults to DEMF, and it gives the category for her home company. But this project was in our borrowing company, USMF. So she's going to pick that. And then she's going to pick the project that she was working on. And she's going to pick her activity. And then she's going to put the category. This can also default. I just don't have it set up to default. And I just set up a category testing here, but this could be a category that you group your resources on, like a business analyst or a developer or some other grouping. So let's just say that Dawn worked 8 hours on Monday and 8 hours on Tuesday and 8 hours on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. She had a full week on the project. As you can see, I have this defaulted to billable, so it's billable. So now I'm going to submit this to the workflow. And now what will actually happen is based on my configuration, which I'll show you a little bit later. This is going to auto-approve. So if we go back over to DMF, and we look at the timesheets, we can see the timesheet here is in review. Just in a few minutes, it goes to approved, and this is all based on configuration for the workflow. And then in a couple minutes, it should post. And it did post, so now Dawn's timesheet is posted. So we'll go back to our workflow chart here. So this is the box that we're in. So she, as the worker from DMF, posted her time against the project that was in USMF, and we actually can see that. So if we go back to and view the pending transactions, oh wait, sorry, I got to switch to the company where the project is. Sorry. For project management accounting, pending project transactions. You can see for the date, the 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th, and 20th, here are Dawn's transactions. 8 hours a day. All right? So does anybody have questions about that portion? All right. So the next thing we're going to move on to then is the next box in the flow. And this is where the lending company, DEMF, is actually going to invoice the USMF company, the borrower, for the project time that Dawn worked. Okay? So we're going to go over to DEMF. And I'm going to show you the setup that a little bit later after we go through the demo and you see all the steps. I'm going to go through the setups that were required to make this happen. So I'm going to go to Project Management and Accounting, Project Invoices, Intercompany Customer Invoices, and I'm going to invoice my customer, USMF, not to be confused with the legal entity. So I've set the borrowing company up as a customer. And here are Dawn's transactions. As you can see, there's a price here of $50, and I'm going to show you a little bit later where that price is coming from. So this is not her cost in this legal entity. It is not her sales price. It is what's called a transfer price. I'm going to show you a little later where that gets set up. So I'm going to select all these transactions, and it's going to bring me into a proposal that's based on the free text invoice in AX. It's very similar to that. All the fields are the same. And then I'm going to post this invoice. So you can see right here it gave me the number of the invoice that was posted, number 4. And actually, if I want to view this invoice, it saves it in the same place that the free text invoices are saved. So I'm just going to go to accounts receivable and take a look at that in free text invoices. And then right here you can see my number 4 invoice. And if we take a look at that, that's going to be that invoice that we posted for Dawn, charging our USMF company. So that's the invoicing portion. So we're on this box here. Now the borrower is going to pay the invoice that was created. So it's a receivable on the lender side and it's a payable on the borrower side in the USMF company. Let's just take a look at that. So we're going to switch to our USMF legal entity, which is our company that borrowed the resource. And if we go to accounts payable and look at our pending vendor invoices, we're going to find our invoice. So because of a trading relationship that I set up, I'm going to show you that a little bit later how I set that up. This invoice was automatically created, and you can see down here in the preview the lines that were created. This vendor invoice was created for me. I didn't have to create it on this side. So I'm just going to post that. And now that will become a liability, a vendor liability on this side, and I can actually pay this invoice just like I would any other payables invoice. So I'm going to show you that. I'm just going to go into the payment journal for accounts payable, and I'm going to create a new journal. Now what I could have done is I could have created a separate journal name for this, and I had a different voucher series. I didn't for this demo, but you could if you wanted to. And then on your transactions list for general ledger, you could easily see these are different. So I'm going to go into lines. It's working. A minute, please. Well, sorry, I guess my client, I don't know what happened there. Okay, we'll try that again. Accounts payable, payment journal. Here's the payment journal that I created. Lines. So I'm just going to put in my DEMF vendor that I created. And I could use a payment proposal, all the standard ways that you pay your vendors, but I'm just going to use the function settlement feature. As you can see, there's my invoice number 4 with the $2,000, and I'm just going to mark that. And I'm paying this electronically, so I don't need to generate a check or anything. This vendor had a payment method for electronic. I'm just going to post that. Then once it's posted, we're going to go ahead and take a look at that financial entry that's made. We just look at the voucher for that journal. We can see that it debited the vendor balance and it credited our bank account, taking the money out to pay the vendor. So just like a typical vendor payment, you got your debit on your liability side and your credit for your bank. So now what's going to happen in the background is USMF would have physically sent the money electronically to DEMF, and they would have received the money into their bank account. And so now DEMF is going to receive that payment just like they would any other electronically received customer payment. So I'm going to go to Accounts Receivable in the lending company, and I'm going to go to Journals, Payments, Payment Journal, and I'm going to create a new payment journal. And you could use the intercustomer payments like you always do if you want to, or you can go straight to the line. I'm just going to use the lines, and I'm going to put in my customer USMF, and I'm just going to use that function settlement feature. And I'm going to mark my invoice so you can see from here this is the number 4 invoice I'm receiving. I'm going to pick my payment method and my bank account. So they're paying me in US dollars, so I'm going to pick that bank account. And so now I'm just ready to post this. And now if we take a look at that voucher, you can see that I credited my customer balance for my intercompany receivable, and I debited my cash. So now I've received that payment from my sister company, and it's been posted. All right. So do we have any questions? If not, I was going to cover the setup. So one more time, let's recap what we saw before we cover the setup. We scheduled our worker on the project from using a worker in our lending company on the borrower's project. Then that worker, whoops, I clicked it too many times, sorry about that. Then that worker posted their time against the project from their home company. So it was in their home company, and they put the time against the project in the borrowing company. Then the lending company invoiced the borrowing company for the worker's time. Then the borrowing company paid the lending company for the worker's time. And then finally the lending company accepted the payment from the borrowing company. So now let's take a look at how we set that up. The very first setup that you have to make sure that you do for this to all work is you want to make sure that your units, you have the exact same units that you're going to use for your billing in both legal entities. So if you go to Org Admin, Setup, Units, Units. Now just so happened I was using hour as my units on my invoices. So we'll just search for that. So hour exists in my lending company, right? And then when I switch to my borrowing legal entity, I also have that same unit. It has to be exactly the same for it to work. Whatever units you're using, it doesn't matter which ones you use. As long as it exists in both legal entities, you're good. All right? Then the next setup that you need to check to make sure that it's done is, hang on, let's make sure I don't miss anything. So then the next thing is in your project management accounting parameters. So project management accounting, setup, project management accounting parameters. On your intercompany tab, you want to make sure you enable your intercompany resource scheduling and timesheets. And you also have to have the hierarchy set up in product information management and a default category picked in that hierarchy for the process. So I've set up one called Intercompany Resources so I could easily identify that category, and I've attached it in the parameters. This will have to be done in both the borrowing legal entity and in the lending legal entity. I'm just going to show it to you in the borrowing, but it has to be set up in both. All right. Now the next thing that I did was I went here to the borrowing legal entity, and I went over into accounts payable, and I created a vendor for my lending legal entity. Now in this example, I named it the same as the legal entity, but it wouldn't have to be. You just add it like you would any other vendor. The fields that are required have to be filled out. If you want to put an address, if that's applicable, maybe you're actually exchanging a check and you're not doing electronic payment, so that's required. So whatever's normally required for your vendor. And you don't have to do anything special on this side. Then the next step is you go over to the company that's lending, and you're going to set up the borrowing company as a customer. So if we go to accounts receivable, and we go to customers, we can see right here, I just happen to name the customer the same as my borrowing legal entity. And I set this up as I would any other customer. And again, what fields are required have to be filled out for the minimum. Then there's one special setup that you have to do on the customer in the lending legal entity. And that's on the general tab of the customer. And you go to intercompany setup in the setup group. And you have to turn on the trading relationship. So I activated the trading relationship. I told it what company the trading relationship was with and the name of the vendor account. So it just so happens it's the same name as the legal entity, but whatever vendor I had designated, so that will create that invoice for you when you create the intercompany customer invoice, is designated here. So what that tells you is for every vendor that you have an intercompany relationship with, you'll need a separate customer. Now once I have that set up, the next thing I have to do is make sure my worker is ready for project work. So if we go to Human Resources, and we find Dawn, our worker, there she is. And then in the project setup for Dawn, I just need to make sure that she has a period code. She doesn't necessarily have to have a default category, but I set one up. She will have to have a calendar for her maxed hours and also for her resource scheduling. and you at least have to have the category validation enabled on your project. I have project and category, but you only have to have the category. And because I was using a 24-hour calendar, I limited the number of hours that Dawn was available, and this shows the availability, drives the availability on the resource scheduling. So after I made sure that she was ready for project work, the other things I have to set her up is her competencies. I have to make sure that those are in place. So I had to set up her education, her skills, whatever is applicable for the resource scheduling, whatever you want to apply to that team role that you're going to set up. Then the very last thing that has to be done is in general ledger on both sides, in the borrowing company and in the lending company. You have to go into general ledger and set up posting, intercompany accounting, and you have to set up those relationships. So here in the lending company, I've set up intercompany accounting with USMF, and then if we change over to USMF, you'll see DEMF set up. So you can see I have DEMF set up here. Okay, let's go back to our PowerPoint. Recap. We took a look at intercompany resource scheduling. We scheduled Dawn from the lending company onto a project into the borrowing company. We posted her time in her home company for the project in the borrowing company, and then we invoiced the borrowing company, the lending company, invoiced the borrowing company for Dawn's work, and then we posted that vendor invoice and paid it. And we took a look at some of the postings that are involved with the ledger, and then finally we took a look at the setup. So now I'm going to turn that back to you guys for questions.
All right, thanks, Renee. All right, so looks like we do have a question, but for people that aren't familiar with how to answer questions, there's a Q&A box on the right-hand side of your screen, and you can feel free to type in your questions, and Renee and Gregor will get to them. But Renee, we actually have one question that just came in. How do you invoice the hours in the borrowing company to a customer? Is it possible?
Yes, it's possible, but that's a separate process. That's your project invoicing process. So that'll be at a different price. Oh, that's one thing I forgot to cover. Let me go back. I apologize. The price that was on that intercompany invoice, that is set up in the lending legal entity. Let me just show you that. I apologize for that. Let's see. And you have to set up a transfer price. So this, now I just have it set up that all resources for this go to this one price. But the various ways you can invoice this, a contribution ratio, a percentage, an amount, a percentage of a sales price, amount above a sales price. It can be based on categories, projects, workers. So this is the transfer price, what I'm charging between my two sister companies. If you're going to do invoicing to your customer in your borrowing legal entity, then that's just your standard project invoicing process where you invoice customers, and that price will be based on your sales price. Did that answer the question? It doesn't matter that the worker was borrowed to the customer. So you just invoice them like you would for any project.
Thanks, Renee. Let's give people another couple of minutes to collect their thoughts and submit any questions if they have any. We have another question actually that just came in, Renee. Somebody's asking if you can show how Dawn's hours got booked to the project as a cost.
Sure. That's where we saw the pending transactions. Well, now that she's posted that we've invoiced them, they're not there, so we'll go to the project itself. So here's Dawn's transactions. But this isn't the transfer price. This was the cost price. Here's her cost, and then here's the sales price. So the cost is the transfer price, and this is what the sales price shows, and this is what you're going to invoice your customer. And of course, this is all based on configuration. Did that answer the question?
Looks like it did. The person doesn't seem to have any follow-up comments. Yes, they said thank you. Here's another question. How do we do this for a piece of equipment?
That's as an item. It doesn't matter about whether or not it's a person. This intercompany relationship is based on time. I'll have to come back to you on that one. We can follow up with that person if they want to send an email to Gregor at the end. We'll give his email address, and then we can answer that question. It works a little different for items.
Great, thanks. We'll just see if we have any more questions coming in. We'll just give people another minute or so. Actually, here's another question. Someone's asking about the cost, like travel expense.
Yes, you can do expensive with this as well, because it could be a fee. It could be set up as a fee versus an hour, and then you could bill that as well. We can also provide those instructions separate if they like.
Great, thank you. Let's see if anybody has any more
project category.
Renee, here's another question that just came in. Regarding intercompany clearing or balancing reporting, in other words, what reports are available to show WIP or accruals needed?
Yeah, the best thing to do that is to do with a different voucher series for your postings, and you can do it that way. You'll take the accounts in one legal entity and compare them to the accounts in the other legal entity. There's not really a canned report for that. But you can use your transaction list. If you had a separate voucher series, you could locate those transactions and pull them out that way. So in your general ledger inquiry voucher transactions, if you had a separate voucher series, you could find them that way. Does that answer the question?
Yep, looks like it did. Thank you. We'll just see if anybody has any more questions they'd like to submit. All right. Well, looks like there aren't any other questions, but in case people think of stuff offline, Renee, did you say that there was Gregor's email address you could put up there?
Yeah, it is. Yes, sir.
Okay.
So if you have
Perfect.
any of your questions that you had that didn't get answered today, if you'll just send those to Gregor. Gregor, you want to go ahead and say hi again?
Sure. Thanks everybody for attending. We hope this is added to your day. So we're giving you back 15 minutes of your day. Thank you very much. And please reach out if you have any further questions.
Great. Thanks so much, Gregor. Thanks, Renee, and thanks everybody for attending. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you so much. Y'all have a great day.